I'm on. I wore my porcupine hugging shirt kind of as, I guess, a passive aggressive way of just kind of leaning into the tension of, hey, can I look in you in the face? Can I touch you? Can I hug you? Which that preceded COVID for me anyway. If you know me, I've had a bubble for years, so I'm not against hugging. I'm learning to accept it a little bit more. Just don't come up behind me. You might throw elbows. Just ask first. Anyway, I think there's there's a lot of good reasons I've been hearing to still wear a mask, even though rules are changing a little bit. Some of the most creative this morning, I've already heard a couple of people say, I'd want to wear my mask because I forgot to do my makeup. I don't want to wear makeup anymore. My son didn't shave this morning, so he thought like that'd be a good way to do it. Or just don't have breath mint, so just keeping everybody happy with me. So whatever reasons, I'm glad that you're here. I want to address an issue in this Who is My Neighbor series that we're in. Kind of more in terms of educating, maybe casting vision this morning. I know this is something that is close to many of your hearts. And all of us, I know, we want to make a difference. We do. In our hearts, we want to live a bigger story in the lives, especially of people that we know that are in need, whether it's material need. We talked about relational needs last week, or just needs for acceptance, those kinds of things. But in terms of like people who we would say that are poor or are not as well off as we are, a lot of times we say the language, we want to help them. We want to do more to help those who are poor, empower them to take steps out of whatever poverty that they might be living in. Into a life that is fuller, maybe a life that God's designed them to live. And I know there are many of you, either here today or maybe watching, who would say you're struggling in some ways right now. There's apparently actually a hashtag, you've probably seen it, it kind of made a comeback, I think, this past year in social media. It was the hashtag, I'm so broke. You got to be careful every time you go searching hashtags online. But a lot of people just kind of use that, I think, as a way just try to kind of stay lighthearted in light of some real struggles, being stretched. For example, one of them I always thought was funny is, I'm so broke, my baloney has no last name. You ever heard that? So like if you're under 40, you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But several of you kind of knew, so there's a lot of over 40s, I guess. You get that one. Somebody else said, right, I'm so broke, I can't even get a sugar daddy. They said, all I can afford is a Splenda daddy, which I think Splenda costs more than sugar, though, right? I saw another one made me laugh. I'm so broke, I rub cologne from magazines on my shirt. And when they say, oh, you smell so good, what is that? I tell them, that's page 5. One person said, I thought this was kind of gross, but I'm so broke, I go to Kentucky Fried Chicken to lick other people's fingers after they eat. Yeah, this is broke and nasty. If you're broke, just don't be nasty, okay? But the reality is, okay, there's a lot of people even in our own backyards, maybe in our own neighborhoods, that are struggling. And maybe on the surface, we try to keep those things kind of hidden, whether that's financially or other ways. And many of you might even just say, I'm in a really deep place right now, and I'm struggling. There's a lot of unknowns, and that causes me anxiety, and it keeps me up at night. What do I do? Some of you, maybe you've actually been, I know some of you have been on mission trips or gone to like developing nations where their way of life is much different. Even the way they define poverty is much, much different, right, than maybe right down the street from us. In fact, if you've ever been to a place kind of looks like this is a picture a little south of our borders, and you'll see this all over the place, little one-bedroom shanties, shacks, very unstable. And there may be like 6, 7, 8, 9 people, families living in these residences. And I mean, these are the size of closets, literally, in a lot of our homes. And they're made of these metal scraps. They're maybe got a sheet for a door, might be a bucket in the corner, and that's their toilet. That's where people go to the bathroom. They don't have access to water. And they might have to travel even miles to a community to get water, just to clean themselves or just to be able to drink. And that's a daily reality for many, 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 many people around our world. And while we might say, okay, well, there's no food in my refrigerator, which is a reality, they would never say that. Right? They're just hoping sometimes for a bag of flour or rice or something that might get them through the week. And it's very, very, very difficult. And whether it's poverty like that or someone who's unemployed down the street from us, all poverty is real. It's all felt, and it's very, very personal. And so I want to talk about, okay, how do we empower those neighbors of ours who are in need in a way that would honor Christ, in a way that he would have us to do this? And what's really interesting to me is in Matthew 25, okay, Jesus tells another parable about he's talking about the time when he's going to return for his people, what it's going to look like. But in this parable, he actually addresses this very issue. And look what he says. He says, "Then the king will say to those on his right, 'Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world,'" right? So we're being welcomed in. And then he says, for I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me into your home. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you cared for me. I was in prison, and you visited me." And so these righteous ones, they're a little confused. They're like, "Okay, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or feed you? That's great, but we don't remember, right? When did we see you thirsty, give you something to drink? When did we see you were a stranger, give you hospitality, or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick? When did we ever come see you in prison?" The king will say, "I tell you the truth. Anytime you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." And of course, we know when he says the least of there, he's not talking in terms of like inherent value. It's just, the way we look at social things. When you help someone that was in need, you weren't just helping them, you were helping me. I mean, just think about that. It's mind-blowing. Just imagine for a moment that whenever you do whatever you can do with whatever is within your power to do it, to help someone, to empower someone who doesn't have what they need, you are actually ministering to and you are actually blessing Jesus. It's mind-blowing. I mean, can you imagine? That's how special it is to use whatever it is that I have to use, whatever he has blessed me with, to make a difference in someone else's life, in your world. Perhaps this is why Proverbs 19 says this: if you help the poor, check this out, you are lending to the Lord, it says, and he will repay you. It's like you are literally serving God himself by serving other people, by serving your neighbor in need. 1 John 3:17 is a verse that might stun you into silence when you think about the power behind this. He said, if someone has enough money to live well and sees a brother or sister in need but shows no compassion, how can God's love be in that person? He says, dear children, let us not merely say that we love each other. Let's show the truth by our actions. John was good at this. In other words, right, we're not going to just talk about this, but shut up and do something about it. Don't just talk about it. Live a bigger story, like for real. So how do we do this? Okay, I know you want to. I know we want to. I know every single one of you, when you're exposed to deep needs, it moves you. There's something in us. It's the image of God in our hearts. Whether you follow Jesus or not, you're moved toward that because God created us to. You do care about it. You want to do something. But the problem is, I know for a lot of us, we just don't know what to do. We don't know how to do it. We don't even know where to begin, right? We don't really know how to get it right. And the problem sometimes seems so big and so out of our reach, it can even feel pretty overwhelming. And so we're just kind of frozen. But in order to get it right, I want us to first try to think about what it is we're even really talking about here. Because if I ask most of you, okay, what is poverty? How would you describe it? How do you define it? You might say, okay, well, that's like someone who doesn't make enough to survive, or they don't have adequate housing, or they don't have adequate access to water and such. They don't have good health care. It's poverty. Most Americans, in fact, would define poverty as a lack of something material, which makes sense, okay? Your 14-year-old, your teenager might say, okay, well, we're poor because I can't afford the next iPhone or something, right? And we have joked about that. That's kind of how we think about it, though, right? Whatever it is, it might be relative to where you are, but most Americans would say, okay, poverty is lacking something material, something tangible. Now, on the other hand, okay, there was a group that surveyed 60,000 or more people in low-income countries that would have defined themselves as poor. And this is how these actual poor people defined poverty for themselves. The truly poor defined poverty more as a mindset. They said they never said it was just lacking something material. Like, I can't afford a nice pair of jeans or something like that. They never said that. They said it's the way we think. It's the way we're kind of trapped in this mindset. They said it's a deep sense of shame. I feel very ashamed that I can't do more. I look at my family and I see them struggling, and I just feel this weight. I feel this burden that I can't do anything else to help them. I'm trapped. I can't make it out of this. They said there was just this ongoing feeling of worthlessness in the way they had to live. In fact, they used the word fear over and over and over and over and over again. We're just afraid. They used the word humiliation. And they use this word hopeless again and again. It's not just like, hey, I wish I had a car with, backup cameras and then I'd be safer and things like that. No, it was in their mindset. It's not that. It's I don't even know how to get out of this. I don't have access to education. I don't have any kind of transportation to even get to a job. I don't have any hope to. I just want to try to feed my family today. It was a mindset for a lot of them, more so than it was just material things. And I'll be honest, I don't know what it feels like to be in that situation, but I imagine if I'm looking at my family and I feel this sense of desperation, I might be moved to do just about anything to try to get them into or towards a better situation. And let's just be real honest, okay? This isn't just low-income countries around the world. This mindset exists right here in Kansas City, right here in Blue Springs, right here in Jackson County. And I know as a church, we've learned a lot about this over the several years as a church. We've learned to understand that meeting needs is more than just helping someone get what they need to survive another day. That's a big part of it. But we also have learned we've got to really be intentional about helping people change the way they think. We need to really help turn a mindset from a sense of hopelessness to a real sense that that God can give them what they need to get out of the situation that they're currently in. And what does that even look like? Is it more than just words, or is it really something we live? We want to be able to give in a way that helps, right? We never want to be able to say we hurt someone in the way that we tried to help them. And then unintentionally we can do that. The problem is a lot of times we often think we know what helps, and our motives are golden, but we end up giving in a way that actually hurts people. Like, for example, okay, there was a time I read about a group went on a short-term missions trip, and they went to one of these developing nations. They took a bunch of clothes with them. They took like hundreds of T-shirts with them, which was a great thought. We're just going to give these cool, clean T-shirts to these kids with not a lot, and all the kids and adults. They got there, they're lining up to get these clothes and these T-shirts. And what this group didn't realize that, until a few days later, there were actually 3 women that were in this small community that they went to that made shirts to sell, to support their own families, right? And they came and undermined these women's business and hurt these families in an effort to do good. Their intentions weren't to do that, obviously, but the result might have not have been as helpful because we're trying to help them out of our own value system and not theirs. And what is this? He kind of filled in the music for us for a while. He and I had some pretty cool conversations. He had he still does, has this deep burden to do something in the inner cities in Kansas City. And we talked about, okay, well, how could a church like ours out in the suburbs, how could we partner? How could we do something to kind of help do more for, where people that he loves and cares about live and the things that they struggle with? And it was really enlightening for me because he's like, it's really hard because a lot of churches think they're doing good. We'll go down, we'll do a block party, we'll pass out pizzas, we'll do some really cool things down there. But then we kind of leave, and it doesn't do a lot on the back end to help the people that really need the help. We come back and we pat our backs and we say we did something good. We put our Instagram pictures up and things like that. They're still left there struggling. Sometimes we want to come and we want to help somebody, but without knowing it, by giving them a handout, sometimes we actually insult them in the process. For example, the past couple of years, I know we've had some within our church family around Christmas time. We'll adopt a family or two, and we'll give them gifts, and it's something that's beautiful, right? It's a great thing to do. I hope we keep doing this. We'd find a family or two that's in need, and we'd go all out, and we'd go shopping. We'd bless this family. We'd give them some things they couldn't afford, make a really great Christmas for their kids, right? And it's a really cool, really rewarding way to help another family. And it doesn't take a lot of time for most of us. It doesn't take a lot of money when people team up, and it feels really good, doesn't it, to know that you're changing someone's family for Christmas. But we always try to take real care to do this in the right way that it preserves the dignity of those that we're trying to help. Like I've heard some pretty embarrassing ways in which this is done before. For example, it's never happened here that I know of, but there was another group that I heard about one year. They went to deliver gifts kind of like this. They went to help this family. And they thought it would be really cool, like let's just surprise the family and see the sense of joy that comes on their face when we show up. But they found out really quickly that what they thought was helping was actually incredibly painful for this family in a way that they did it. Because they came in, right, and it's like, surprise, woo, and the kids are really, really excited, and all these gifts, and everything was great. But the dad sat down over in the corner, just kind of slumped over, his face in his hands, just looked totally broken, like totally humiliated. And in their good intentions, their golden motives, right, they essentially said to this dad, in front of his wife, in front of his kids, hey, since you're not capable of providing for your family, we're going to do it for you. Totally good intentions, right? But it brought shame on a guy who was doing the best he could, ended up hurting someone that we were trying to help. So why do I share this? Do we stop doing stuff like that? Of course not. No, never. But we have to be diligent to only use material things such as food, such as gifts, such as tangible things as tools to reach deeper needs. So how do we live this out? What do we do? What do we do when there's a guy on the street we see time after time after time at the same intersection who's always asking for money? Right? What do we do when you cross someone downtown that's apparently in need of somewhere to stay? What do you do when someone in your church or someone in your small group loses their job? What do you do when you recognize, okay, there's some big global need out there, and next number of thousands of dollars, we could get clean drinking water to someone. We could get mosquito nets. We could save you. We could get vaccines. We could do all these things to help. What do you do when you're overwhelmed with this burden, with this need? How do we help in a way that doesn't hurt? Well, I want to just leave you with 3 quick thoughts this morning that I hope you'll wrestle with, that you'll talk about together, that you'll start to, with us as a church, how do we do this? How do we lean into this? This isn't like quick answers today, we go out here and do this. This is the kind of stuff that we lean to over the summer and we start to rebuild. These were the kind of things we were really excited about before COVID hit, that we were getting better at and finding places to partner in our community to do. How do we do this? 3 quick thoughts I think will be helpful as we seek Jesus and get this right. All right, number 1, we need to recognize that we are called to serve, but not to save. And so let me explain what I'm talking about here, okay? Don't miss this. We're called to serve, not save other people. Because it can be dangerous, it can be insulting even sometimes when we think we are someone's answer. Right? We are not the answer. Church isn't the answer. Jesus is the answer. We are the servants. Jesus is the power, okay? We are the conduit. Paul told the believers at Corinth, he said, if you only look at us, you might miss the brightness. And he said, we carry this precious message around in the unordained clay pots of our ordinary lives. It's a beautiful metaphor, right? We carry this around. We are the conduit of his love, of his power. But we don't save people. We don't look at all that we've done and pat ourselves on the back. We serve people. We just love people. Jesus saves people. So how does he want us to serve then? Let me get just 2 thoughts, and I'm not completely even sure yet how this might apply to you personally. I'm not even really sure how this applies to us as a church quite yet, but I want to at least try to cast a vision for this, recast this vision for us. I'd love for you to just start getting this into your vocabulary as we talk about this, so we as a church can understand this a little bit better. How do we do this? How do we serve others and not try to save them? It's 2 things essentially, I think. Relief and restoration. All right, so what is relief? Well, relief is this immediate temporary help during a crisis, right? Something blows up, there's immediate help. A tornado wipes out a neighborhood, or there's a hurricane hits a city, earthquake demolishes a job. Someone loses income, a relative discovers that they have an illness, someone has cancer, someone gets hit by a car, they're in really bad shape in the hospital, right? There's an event, there's a crisis. So they need relief, they need attention, and it's immediate, it's temporary to help them get through this crisis. But then there's restoration, okay? Restoration is a little bit different. Both of these are important, but restoration is a long-term relationship to help rebuild wholeness. It's not just triage, it's not just relief, right? The tornado hits, the hurricane hits, Earthquake, someone loses their job. There's a lot of news. There's a lot of attention around some of that. Maybe it lasts for a week or so, maybe a couple of weeks. The world moves on, though, eventually, and tons of people are still left kind of holding the pieces, trying to rebuild their lives. Jesus' followers are the ones that stay in the trenches when the news goes on to report something else. When the attention gets diverted somewhere else, there are Jesus' followers still there providing restoration. Essentially, this is what the Good Samaritan did. When this Jewish man been beaten up, left for dead, think about it. He offered relief and restoration, right? He came by this guy who was beaten so badly he might die, gave him the attention he needed right there. Gave him some relief. Here's some oil for your wounds, right? Here's some bandages. Let me do what I can help to just get you back in health, to help you survive. Then what he did was he put him on his donkey. He carried him into town to bed and breakfast, essentially, and said, hey, I'm going to pay for this. I got to go take care of some business on my own, but I'm going to be back. So I want you to do whatever it takes to help this guy restore what he had. Why? Because I want to see you rebuild your life. I see value in this, right? I want to provide relief and restoration. So we serve, we don't necessarily save. Number two, okay, we're called to relate, not rescue. And again, you're like, okay, well, Dennis, what are you talking about? Helping the poor, helping people to live better lives, to live bigger stories is a relational thing. I mean, listen, those who are struggling are not just projects for us to help, right? They are people, lives that inherently have value. They are people that matter to God as much as you and I matter to God. And only by the grace of God am I not there. I didn't fill out an application before I was born to ask God to keep me from being born in certain parts of the world or to certain situations. It had nothing to do with that. They are people to be loved, right? Get that. They're not just projects we help. They're people that you love. And when we begin to understand this, okay, it starts to change everything. Like let me just give you another example of maybe how we could get this wrong. Let's say there's First Imaginary Church out there somewhere. They want to do a project in their own community for like this rundown apartment complex. And so there's people in really, really bad conditions that are living there. So as a church, okay, we get together. We raise some money, right? We plan a day. Get a lot of people together. We get some really cool matching serving T-shirts printed up. And we go in there with our kids and our families. We play Christian music, right? We put on this kind of big block party, make improvements to these apartments. We make it look just like we would want it to look if we lived there, right? Build them a great new big playground, landscape the whole place, paint the walls and trim, do like this extreme home makeover, apartment complex edition or something, right? Sounds really good. I mean, what's wrong with that, Dennis? Why would we not want to do that for people? What could possibly be the mistake? Okay, here's the possible mistake, is when we don't take the time to actually get to know the people that live there. Nothing relational. We talk to people a little bit, but then we're gone. Nobody gets asked, okay, what would help you live life better? What can we do for you? What do you need? Had the church started maybe with the deeper needs in mind first, you ask up front, you might meet a 25, 26-year-old single guy who says, you know what, if I could just learn to read a little bit better, I might be able to get a better job. I might be able to get ahead, provide for my family. You might hear someone say, well, if I could just stop drinking, if I could get someone to just care about me enough to get me to where I need to go, I could start putting the pieces of my life back together again. A young mom might say something like, if I could just get a ride, if I could just get some kind of transportation, so I could get to a job that pays more than minimum wage, I might be able to whatever. Now, the residents there, okay, we might have asked them, they might have said something like, hey, if we had a really cool playground for our kids and some flowers, right, that would change our existence, change our lives. They might have said that. But even if they did, it would have been so much better to have said, how can we help you achieve that? How can we help you get there? It would have been much better to have included them relationally. Because then they matter. Then they have value. And we've told them that. They would have brought what they had. They would have brought their gifts and their talents and their experiences. And they would have experienced a deeper sense of self-worth. The church would have helped them accomplish what they wanted to accomplish. And a few years later, it wouldn't just be a rundown place again, like it likely would be, because good-intentioned people came in, but just kind of played the hero and patted themselves on the back, did something that wasn't really helpful, and went back to their blessed lives. In our efforts, in our good efforts, in our well-intentioned efforts to save the world, though, sometimes we need to stop and get to know people, value their story. What can we do to help you accomplish your dreams? What do you need? How can we better partner with you to make it better? In other words, it's kind of like this, okay? We never want to do for someone else what they can do for themselves. Okay? Thought I had a slide, but don't miss this, okay? We never want to just do for someone else what they can do for themselves. That sounds a little selfish, doesn't it? No. That's not callousness, that's empowerment. That's where I start to sense my own worth because I can. I can. There's evidence now that I can do for myself. You probably apply this to your kids sometimes, right? It'll change your life. We're not going to do for someone else what they can do for themselves because that empowers them. It doesn't enable them. We're going to help them accomplish what they want to do that gives them dignity, pride, sense of forward movement. You know, those who are struggling are not just projects that we help, they're people that we love. And we're called to serve others, not save others. We're called to relate with people, not rescue people. Now, I may have this out of order. You might need to help me back there. But number 3 is, okay, we're called to reach out, never reach down. Okay? We're called to reach out, never reach down. We're reaching out because we care. But we're never reaching down because we are no better. We are no more valuable than anybody else. So we have to really, really be mindful of our posture when we do these things. When we're reaching out, what we're essentially saying is, hey, you know what? Me too. My circumstances might be different, but I struggle too. I know what loneliness feels like. I know what being in need feels like. I struggle too. I have problems too, and I'm not the hero. I'm not your savior. Right? I don't have all the answers. I'm reaching out simply because I care about you as a person and I know you're valuable too and you're worth it. And you matter. In fact, I love what Brené Brown said. I think I got this quote if you want to help me out. She's a researcher and an author. She said this about this particular subject. She says, we divided the world into those who need help and those who offer help. But the truth is we are both. And I love that. We are both. You know, I've been blessed, but I also am needy. I can't do this on my own. There's a bigger story at play than just me. And so we offer help and we need help because, you know what? We're poor too. And that's how you love your neighbor. We never just swoop in as the heroes trying to reach down to people. We reach out. We reach out because we love, because we care. And a lot of times, many times, something else we've learned as a church is that we don't need to just start anything. We don't need to start everything. We don't need to put our name on everything necessarily. We don't have to start a bunch of new programs. Sometimes we're better to go and find someone who's already doing what we want to do well and partner with them. And we've learned that over the last couple of years. And so we've developed some community partnerships with places like Restoration House or Community Services League and Harvesters, because they do what they do really, really well. And we want to be a part of that as well. And so the next time you have a desire to do something in your community, you might just talk to someone and ask, hey, who could I be partnering with? Who could I give my time and energy to help? And then you take what you have, your time, your talent, your treasure, your resources. You take your heart and you reach out to someone who's in need and partner with someone else. But at the same time, I never forget that I'm in need too, that I'm not perfect, that I'm blessed. And it doesn't always have to have my name on it. It doesn't always have to have Life Point Crossing's flag flying on it, right? You don't always have to get the credit. And you know what's really awesome? Something you might not expect, but it makes it even more awesome when you don't expect it, is that when you give to others, oftentimes they have this way of giving back to you so much more than you felt like you gave to them. It's very reciprocal. It's very fulfilling. And that's not why we do it. In fact, if that's the only reason I'm doing it, I probably won't experience this. But when I'm selfless, man, God has a way of feeding me with that. That's how we neighbor. We love God with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. And what do? We love our neighbor as ourselves. We have poor neighbors right next door, right? We have poor neighbors in our community. We have poor neighbors across the sea. And at the same time, we are poor in many ways, so we freely give and we freely receive. And that's how we love one another. So in just a moment, we're going to close and pray together again today. And again, this is a little different thing that I'm trying to plan in your mind. I want you to kind of think through some practical ways in your own circles. How does this apply? How do we bring this back to central focus here as a church? Like last year, before a lot of this hit, we were getting a pretty good track record of at least once a month as a church. We had a service outreach project. We were partnering, and some of that kind of got lost in the shuffle of COVID and a lot of these things. But, now that we're kind of leaning back into some things that we weren't able to do before, I don't want us to lose track of this as a church. I don't want us to get off focus with this. So what are some ways we can continue to doing this? What are some things that you are already, that's where we found some of our partners. You are already involved in some of these ways, some of you. What are you doing? What has God placed in your heart, in your life? What burdens are you already serving in that we might be able to partner together and do something about it and live a bigger story together? And so we're going to pray together, and I'm going to just assume that all of you want to help, right? I know you do. I know it's in your heart. You want something bigger than you. When you see a need, you want to meet it. I mean, the problem is oftentimes we see these needs and we offer help in a way that doesn't really help. So what I want to do is just ask, how many of you, not by a show of hands or anything like that, this is just in your heart, how many of you would be prayerful, mindful, intentional about this thing with me? Don't just let it end when we say amen today, but actually give some good thought to it. Have some good conversations about it. Don't raise your hands, but just think about it. I want you to be proactive and helpful. What that means is you actually spend some time praying about this too, and you listen. And as you consider that, okay, we've talked about different kinds of poverty too, right? One of the types of poverty a lot of people never think about is spiritual poverty. In fact, some of you might now, if I asked you, how are you doing spiritually, you'd be like, oh, not so hot. Maybe you're spiritually poor. You might say, I kind of feel dead spiritually. But here's some really, really good news. Jesus is your answer too. Jesus came that we might have life, that we might have it to the full, he said. Not just life, but life abundant. Jesus doesn't wait for you to get it right. He meets you right where you are. Whatever need that you have, he loves you no matter what. And he never just leaves you where he finds you, though, okay? He's the ultimate expert when it comes to relief and restoration. God is all about restoring what's been lost and what has been hurt. And he wants to do that in your life if you'll let him too. The one thing you need to do is you need to just trust him. You just need to say yes. You need to take that step and lean into what it is that he offers. And when you say yes to Jesus, when you say yes, I'll give my life to you, I'll give my time, my treasure, my talent, I want to live the bigger story you created me to live, and I trust you with my life. He partners with you, and he allows you to live that greater story written just for you. So would you pray with me? Father, I just ask this morning that you would empower us, that God, you would give us a sense of a story so much bigger than just ourselves that we can't help but want to be a part of that. God, help us as your church to get this right in our community and around the world. God, help us to say yes to the call to empower those whom you've put around us. Recognizing, God, that sometimes we are just as poor, if not in many ways more poor. But give us eyes to see, God. Would you give us ears to hear and a heart to care, seeing the needs around us? Would you help us to know practically what to do with what you've just taught us? And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.